Hi, Jim.
Hello, how are you guys doing? Can you guys hear me okay?
I
Yep.
can hear you.
Great. I am at a conference and I literally had to go down a hallway to find a quiet spot. So
Nice.
Where's the conference at?
it is in Nashville, Tennessee. So downtown Nashville. It's been good. So how are you guys doing?
Good. I'm here solo because Ian's in Nicaragua for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So,
Is he doing
What's the nature of his work there?
they're building a bridge. He's with a team of engineers building a bridge in a remote area. So he has an engineering background, so he gears a lot of his mission work around community development like that.
That's very
So
cool.
I'm claiming his office as my own. I'll tell him when he gets back.
There you go. I'm sure he
That's
will.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, I had something I wanted to tell you about real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was you on the conference call maybe 2 times ago where you were talking about that you host an alpha in your area pregnancy center.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I just felt like this thud in my heart. And a couple days later, I just cold called the director of operations at the local pregnancy center here. And since then, I've met with her twice, talked to her about alpha, and we now have an alpha scheduled to start in June there.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank you for, what you shared with us, because it really helped to open doors or gave us direction on what door to knock on next.
Oh, so cool. Keep in touch.
Yeah,
Let us know what happens. We're just starting a second one we're working with now. So that's
Awesome.
great.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Very good. Well, hey, we're going to go ahead and get started. And as people join, they can just go ahead and jump in whenever they are available. And so I thought it would be helpful today. I'm literally in the middle of a breakout session at the Q conference. How many of you have heard of Q in terms of the Q conference? Okay. A few of you have heard of Q. Really, the whole idea, I love the thought process or the mantra of Q, which is, and I think you will see why this would resonate with alpha, but stay curious, think well, and advance good. And which 3 statements I think really capture much of the heart of alpha. Stay curious, think well, and advance good. And so while we're here, they have loads of talks, and it's really an intellectual exercise. Lots of people give 10-minute talks. And the talks that they're giving really are addressing, dozens of issues. Anything from the Me Too movement to racial reconciliation and diversity. I just got out of a workshop on diversity and how we can develop diversity in a better way as a church. There's conversations around technology and the future of technology and where that is going to take us as a church and just as a society. We talked about mental health illness and just, pretty much any topic that you can imagine that is a current topic today, somebody's giving a talk. And, we even had a guy give a talk on exorcism. And he was the leading expert on exorcism in the Catholic Church, who trains all of the Catholic priests on how to do exorcism. And so he talked about that. I mean, it's just an absolutely fascinating hodgepodge of topics that are being discussed. But if you'd like to get a feel for this conference, you can go to Q. They have a podcast, and it's led by Gabe Lyons, who is the co-author of the book Unchristian and then most recently another book, totally drawing a blank on the name of it, but it just came out 2 years ago. But they really are trying to help the current church think well about modern issues and be intellectually honest about these things. So I'd be curious to hear from all of you briefly, and then I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts. What are some of the major, you guys are all in alphas across the country, all the way from Seattle to, Pennsylvania, and all the way as far as south as Houston and Dallas. What are some of the current modern day issues that pop up either in your alpha course or as issues in your church that are directly affecting your church leadership or your alpha leadership? And I'm just going to pause and we'll wait and you guys can chime in. And no punching gloves. Take the gloves off. You can just be as candid, as you need to be. Or, if it helps, you could describe the modern day challenges that the church next door is facing, that you guys are not facing. It doesn't affect you, but you're confident it affects your neighbors. So.
I think for our church, the church next door, that diversity is always an issue for them. And, how can we change that? I think it's the heart of the church always to change that, but you're just trying to figure out how to make that happen. And then, you just see church plateauing or sliding a little bit. And it's like, oh boy, how do we reach more and more of the community like we did, not too long ago, where things are always going up, where now things seem to be the same. People are coming, but people are leaving, kind of a thing.
Maybe think through some of the things that you hear people share on your alpha. The first couple of weeks when people come in with their guard up and, the issues that they're seeing on the news and they're wrestling with, what kinds of things are in your backyard?
I think for us, the two things that came to mind were issues of addiction and broken families. Those are issues that come up over and over again at our alpha.
Yeah. That's good. Dan, Brad, Joe, you guys want, or Dana?
Yeah. As I'm thinking, one thing that came up a few times this alpha from our younger adult guests was a sense of being behind in life. Millennials are marrying later and later and such, but they feel even further behind, I guess. And I think a lot of that does have to do with some of just the trends in marriage and things. But where was I going with this? But they've been asking that in the light of like, where is God in the midst of this? How there's just no way he can help me recover from my mistakes, my missteps. And neither of them, the two that I'm thinking about, are Christians. And so it's been a challenge to encourage them in God's grace in that area and walk alongside them in the believing in Jesus area. So I wonder if we'll see that more often too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. about you, Brad?
I think for us, it's just been the busyness of their lives. Like people are so overscheduled that finding time to just read the Bible is hard for some people, especially if they have young children. You know, they're always exhausted. They're always taking their kids to all kinds of activities and events, and just the busyness of life is a struggle.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Joe, Brad, we're gonna let you guys off the hook unless you want to share something. Oh, Joe just unmuted.
Yeah, I was going to say what's been unique for me in my role as I'm engaging Y leaders about this is basically just how do you separate following Jesus with like the current stereotype of what it means to be a Christian, and how do you follow Jesus and not be seen as a jerk at the same time that is known for what you're against instead of what you're for. So it's been interesting trying to navigate that and helping, especially YMCA leaders, think through creating space for an alpha group to take place, at the same time not distancing the rest of the community that they're serving.
Yeah, that's so good. All right. Well, I think this is a really important exercise for us to go through with our teams, just to help hear from our teams what are the issues that are coming up. Because really our times are changing so quickly, and it really seems like things are fomenting more and more. Like just the cultural conversations are bubbling up faster than they have in years past. And I think it's so important for us to be aware of the cultural conversations that are taking place around us. Whether or not we feel like we're being affected by them, we absolutely are. And to hear from our team members and to also be aware of what people are walking in the door with when they come to our alphas. When females come in, and how are they going to perceive the room? Or if people come in from a different ethnicity, how are they going to feel when they enter into the room? Or if people come in, I mean, this is really, from any denomination or any lifestyle background, a core practice for us is creating a room of hospitality where we love the stranger. And so in order to love the stranger, we have to be able to listen to the stranger and understand where they're coming from. And so I think it's so important on a periodic basis, and especially now as many alpha courses have really concluded and maybe we're in a season of evaluating or coaching ourselves or our leaders, gathering feedback to say, what can we do better to create a more welcoming environment for everyone? Because if we are intentional about having that conversation with our teams and really saying we want to be the most welcoming atmosphere in our area for people from any background to be able to come and have conversations, that will create the culture then that lets our teams know that they should be out inviting people to come, right? So in engaging the conversation around culture and engaging the conversation around creating hospitable environments, we also create a culture of invitation at the same time. And it just continues to flex that muscle. And, we talk often about speaking to the room that we want to have, not necessarily the room that we currently have. And so for those alphas that are newer, or maybe the teams that are newer, or churches that are beginning to run alpha, we know that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit or a lot of, church attenders that go to those alphas first. And it's very easy to slip into a mode where we just speak to that culture. And for most churches, not all churches, but for many, it's a very homogenous group of people, right? They're not very diverse. They all tend to represent a very similar slice of our society. And so it's very easy then to create an alpha where we're speaking to a very narrow segment, and we're creating a culture that appeals to a very narrow segment of people. And so one resource that I would highly recommend, if you haven't ever checked this out, it's a resources by Ruby Payne. Ruby Payne deals a lot in community development, and she speaks about the hidden rules of society, or the unspoken rules of society. So one of her books is What Every Church Member Should Know About Poverty, and just the hidden rules that exist within poverty. And there are also hidden rules that exist within middle class, and there are hidden rules that exist within the wealthy class. And things that just naturally, if you were born into, these different areas, like, you just naturally know. It comes natural to you because it's your culture. But our churches can also have they can have hidden rules for belonging that exist within the cultures that we're trying to create. So I would encourage you to check that out. There's actually a little survey that you can take in there to help you identify which social class you are most likely to be comfortable in. And my guess would be that your alpha probably has some hidden rules around your hospitality that you may be or may not be aware of in what you're doing, in terms of how you invite people, in terms of the environment that people walk into, the type of food you eat, how people are expected to introduce themselves to others or not introduce themselves to others. All of these things are really helpful, I think, for us as we lead alphas and create spaces of hospitality where everyone can belong. So definitely get a copy of that book and be aware of that, because our goal is to reach everybody, right? We don't want to only reach a certain segment of our communities. We want to reach the whole community, and we want it to be a place where people can invite anyone. So does anybody want to speak to that or comment to that around just the environments of hospitality that we're creating for those that are on the outside, or maybe even evaluating your alpha in terms of the hospitable space that's been created?
Boy, John, I think the food is a great thing to bring up, because we really don't think about that. We think, well, what kind of food do I like? What kind of food do most of the people I know like? But yet, if we're bringing in Hispanic folks, or if we're bringing in African-American or different cultures, or at least trying to reach those people, it may not be the typical chicken, pizza, whatever we normally do. And I never really thought about that. That's a great point to put some time into thinking about.
On food as well, we definitely are seeing a lot more special diets too, whether it be gluten-free, whether it be vegan, different options that we need to be aware of so that we can cater to them when they're coming in, because we're seeing more of it than we did initially.
One of the things that we've done with food is, as part of registration, we ask for a list of allergies. And so we do always have something that someone who is vegan or gluten-free or dairy-free can eat at each of our meals. And that's helped a lot, with folks coming in. Because we actually had a lot of people who weren't eating because of that.
Yeah, it can be very helpful just to even label what things are and what is, if there are any dietary concerns, just for, the general, public, they can very quickly see, oh, this has soy, wheat, dairy, whatever, if possible. And that could be tedious, but again, that's part of being very hospitable. If you were inviting guests over, you'd want them to know what's in things so that they could eat and feel comfortable. One thing that I think could potentially be a barrier is also in communities where there's the opportunity to invite people that might come from a different religious background, being aware of pork, being aware of other religious type things. So a lot of times it's a big deal to have a pig roast, or have bacon and all of these things which are kind of trendy, but could really turn away a whole segment of society because they couldn't ever come in and be able to enjoy those types of foods. So just being aware of some of those things, or making sure that there's kosher things if you have somebody coming from a Jewish background, or things that are halal if you've got potentially people coming from a Islamic background. And so again, this takes so much time and effort and energy to really think through that level of hospitality. But when you do, what you do, even if nobody eats it or nobody appreciates it immediately, is, again, you're creating the culture that says we're creating the room for the people we want here. So this is a place where, you know, we've got halal food and people are like, what is it? I don't even know what that means. What is that? And you have an opportunity to say, yeah, you can totally invite people from other religious backgrounds to be able to come and they can eat freely. Or, you know, you keep the food simple and they're labeled, then people know. And it just creates an expectation that they should be inviting people from those backgrounds and that they could be welcome there. Any other thoughts around, how many of you have ever read Ruby Payne's Hidden Rules of Society? Okay, any thoughts from there? You know, what comes to your mind when you think about that in terms of your alpha or just alphas in general around the country?
One way we saw this come into play in our alpha group is we had a group of people come from our Caring Closet ministry, and during our discussion time is actually where we learned to be better listeners and to be, we really, our team during that time had to kind of talk about being unoffendable in the conversation, that some of the topics of conversation that came up a lot of times were of a sexual nature, and it was something that we hadn't yet experienced, you know, being so openly talked about around the table. And we really wrestled with, like, I mean, my first gut response was like, oh, we have to stop this. Like, this is inappropriate. Like, I'll talk to her afterwards. Don't worry about it, you know. And I really felt convicted that, you know, we don't need to be the protector of the conversation, but the facilitator and loving people in it. And the best way to love her in the moment was to not correct anything about what she was saying or in any way indicate that it was kind of a socially, you know, tense thing to talk about. And we really grew together as a table during that time, just learning to not be offended, but to recognize that people come from different backgrounds and their normal is not necessarily our normal, but our quick, you know, jump into action on the offensive side of it is not helpful. So the conversation did calm down quite a bit through the weeks, but there were some moments, you know, where there were a little blood pressure raising.
Yeah, it can be very challenging even to coach our teams and to train those that are part of our course on how to listen in this way, especially when things get really heated and they may be brand new to even facilitating a small group or helping in a group. People want to be so helpful and they want to just jump in, and, you know, boy, it can be very difficult to do that. Well, I would definitely encourage you to take a look at Ruby Payne's book. Give it some thought in terms of the environment that you're creating, not only at your alpha, but for those of you that have roles that extend beyond alpha into the rest of your church, it may be helpful for you to consider some of these rules, especially as you're doing outreach, because a lot of times it's very easy to take middle-class rules and apply them in our poverty situations that are just, you know, completely different worlds. And it just seems like we're not connecting with people, or we wonder why they don't show up or why they don't do things the way that we thought that they should because they're not following our hidden rules. So definitely check that out. I was able to have a conversation last night with the Chalmers Institute, and folks from the Chalmers Institute wrote a great book called When Helping Hurts. Many of you may have used that or been you may be familiar with that resource. It's a book that, you know, for some can be a paralyzing book because they realize, like, oh shoot, everything we've been doing has been hurting people and we just got to shut down all of our efforts and we don't know what to do now. But they are very aware of that, and they exist to equip and serve the church in issues of poverty and economic issues. And so in the same way that Alpha exists to equip and serve the church in the church's mission to introduce people to Jesus, they do the same thing. And I'm going to put a link in the chat window. This is a new course that they've just created, designed for groups and for individuals, called Are You a Good Neighbor? And really, the idea that Jay Pathak, who wrote The Art of Neighboring, not associated with the Chalmers Institute, by the way, talks about is just the part of the problem that we have is just that we don't know our neighbors, plain and simple. And because we don't know our neighbors, it's very difficult to spend time with our neighbors. And whenever we talk about diversity, I think one of the biggest challenges is that we're speaking to a culture that may be one of the loneliest cultures, right now in terms of friendships. People don't have friends. They don't have community. And we're as impoverished many times relationally here in America as other countries are impoverished materially. And so we're going to people who have very few really good relationships and asking them to do really heavy lifting when it comes to relational work within the church. But this course is very interesting, and I'm actually going to get you all a code so that you can access this for free. And you won't have to pay for that. So I was talking with them and I said, hey, we've got this incredible group of leaders that represent the church all across the country. And I would love for them to be able to see, this is their first swing at it. They created it. They said, hey, we just want you to know, we put this together fairly quickly, but we would love feedback on it. And we think it's going to be a great tool. But the whole idea is to move people into action, to have relationships with people that are different than them. And how do we begin to develop friendships with people of other socioeconomic classes or different ethnicities and actually begin to be better neighbors? And if we can do that, or if our alpha teams can do that, that really is one way that we can flex the muscle of invitation, right? Most people would say, I just don't know anybody. Well, there are some things that you can actually do to go get to know people. And so we would encourage you to do that. So we'll make sure to send you a code, but you can click on that link there. That's from the Chalmers Institute. And they also just are going to be releasing here in a couple of weeks a brand new book called Practicing the King's Economy. And it's all around economic issues of the kingdom of God and what it means to spend money, save money, invest money as a Christ follower. And I know our church, I was a big advocate of Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace. It was a great curriculum that we could just plug and play and really help people get out of debt and do some basic things. And Chalmers Institute definitely takes a slight nuanced twist on some of those things. And so when that book comes out, it'll be a great resource. But those are just a couple of the conversations that I've been able to have here at Q that I feel like are just directly relevant to what we do with Alpha in terms of hospitality and loving people that are different, loving the stranger, in terms of connecting with people and really reaching the whole church. So in just a moment, we're going to create a breakout space with just 3 or 4 people per room. I think we've got a room where we could do 2 breakout rooms, 4 people each, where you can have an opportunity just to connect in with the other hub directors here. And I would love to just treat this as a cohort. And so, we would love for you to think about the previous Alpha that you just maybe concluded, or if you're kicking a new one off, use this as an opportunity to share what worked, what didn't seem to work, with your Alpha, and what is one thing specifically that you would like to improve on with your next Alpha. Okay, so we're going to hear from each other, something that worked, something that didn't work, and something we want to improve for our next Alpha. So before we do that, are there any general questions before we go into that breakout time? Anything around Alpha products, Alpha website, Nikki Gumbel's new wardrobe, anything like that? He's not wearing red sweaters, just blue still. But
I have one. How do we easily access the changes that are coming on the videos that we're hearing about? Are they just automatically going to be included as we register for the new ones, or?
You're talking about the updated scripts and things?
Yes.
Yeah, so a lot of those have already been uploaded to Alpha Builder. So I don't know if it'll be updated in courses you already have registered, but it'll just be an automatic thing when you register your course going forward, I know for sure. The one thing that isn't there yet are the subtitles, and we're working on that. So if you're looking for the updated version with subtitles, that piece won't be there yet. Just
Great.
FYI.
Thank you.
I actually went on there yesterday to download last night's talk for us, and I couldn't tell if it was different. Like it didn't have a version number listed or anything.
And that may be intentional. I would say they didn't make updates to every episode, but I would say at this point, Dana, if you're doing it in English and you don't need subtitles or anything, that what you're getting is the updated version. I don't think they're going to give you a choice to choose which version you want.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys need a list of the changes that were made, I can get you that. They're very minimal.
Really what I need are the specific talks that were changed, because we're actually running it off of the DVDs, but I can download onto my computer and show that way any updated ones.
I can send you that list.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, before we break, anybody been to Nashville before? Where are the best donuts? Anybody know where I can get some good donuts around here? Yeah, no thoughts?
Nobody loves donuts as much as you, John.
I will let you know when I get back where the best donuts in Nashville are. It's my mission while I'm here. So wonderful. Well, go ahead, Lindsay. Why don't you go ahead and put us all into different groups? And again, what's something that worked, something that did not work, or maybe a confessed failure, and what's something that you want to improve? Hopefully it may be connected to that. So we'll go ahead and share, and should be a really good time. And anything else you want to just share with the folks that are on your call. We'll go ahead and try to do that in about 20 minutes to end around 3:50 Central Time. All right, very good. God bless everybody.